You're listening to The Paul Higgins Show, where ambitious tech consultants come to unlock their potential. After 18 years as a global leader, I launched several businesses, culminating in a successful exit. I'm sharing what I learned, plus what's working now from mentoring tech consultants. You will hear leaders within our industry to help you build a business you love that allows you to do what you want. If you are looking for immediate cash flow wins to fuel your growth, go to our free ebook at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap. If you're struggling for top-line revenue growth, you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Paul Higgins, and welcome to the Paul Higgins Show, episode number 537. And in my podcast today, I talked to Philippe Bouissou from Blue Dot Partners about how to generate that top-line revenue growth. Philippe is the best-selling author of Aligning the Dots, an acclaimed TEDx speaker, a growth expert, venture capitalist, CEO, and entrepreneur. Philippe has worked in the Silicon Valley for over 34 years and runs a management consulting firm dedicated to helping businesses grow faster using universal, data-driven, and prescriptive methodologies. Philippe founded and ran Apple's e-commerce business, and he shares some wonderful stories of reporting directly to Steve, and there's only one Steve, as we know. And he grew the revenue from 350 million under Steve Jobs, and now it's in the vicinity of 55 billion. Philippe served on 23 boards, still active on 2, and he's led over 210 management consulting projects. I'll now hand you over to Philippe from blue.partners.com. Great to have you here, Philippe.
Well, it's glad. I'm happy to be a guest on your show.
I loved your TEDx video that we'll have the links in the show notes. I love the analogy of the skydiving. So how many skydives have you done now?
I have done over 1,000 skydives.
And quickly, what got you into the first one?
Actually, I was in a party with my roommate at the time, and he told me, "Hey, tomorrow morning I'm going skydive," and I never thought about skydiving before. And for some reason, I said, "Oh, I'll come with you." And then he woke me up in the morning, and he's like, "We're going." I was like, "Where are we going?" He said, "Well, remember, I'm going skydiving." And I said, "Okay." And that's how I did my first jump, and I just loved it, and I wanted to do it again. So I went through the progression, got my license, and had a lot of fun trying to fly your body at 120 miles per hour, which is not easy.
No. Well, I won't spoil the punchline, but please go and look at the YouTube video. It's got brilliant content. It backs up what Philippe's going to say today, but also it's quite an incredible story. Why don't we kick off with who your ideal clients are and what problems you love to solve for them?
Yeah, so our ideal customer is a company that's doing, at least $10 million in revenue, up to hundreds of millions. And we typically sell to the CEO and the board. The problem we're solving is very hard to solve, but quite simple to explain, which is we help companies grow faster. Yes. So companies want to increase their top line revenue, and they are not sure what to do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. So we have a whole methodology and way to do it, and we help them achieve that goal.
Yeah, and when do they normally bring you in? Like how long have they tried to solve it for themselves before they bring someone like you in?
It's a good question. It depends. Sometimes they plateau and they want to hit kind of the next S-curve, as I call it. Sometimes they realize that they're just not hitting their numbers and they want to know why and they want to change. Sometimes they observe that their competitors is growing faster than them and they're like, well, what's going on? We're losing market share. It really depends. Sometimes they're doing really well and they just want to maintain the momentum because they know they're going to be slowing down and they want to understand what action do they need to take today so that their slowdown in the top line is not happening as fast as they think. And so it's a variety of variations. But again, the common theme is they always want to grow faster. They want to maintain that momentum or increase their growth rate.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I was listening to Bloomberg this week, and they said that is Apple still a growth stock? And analysts were sort of debating that. And I know that you spent a little bit of time at Apple and working for Steve. So you don't have to answer the question, but do you think Apple is still a growth stock?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think Apple will stop innovation. The question is it's going to be significant, groundbreaking innovation, or are they just going to continue to increase innovation through smaller steps? I mean, if you look at the announcement today of the new iPads, I mean, yeah, they are better, but there's nothing really eye-shattering. I think that the Vision Pro is an interesting product. I think it's the beginning of that. But I'm an optimistic, and the team there is bright, and they're going to continue to innovate. And so I would not bet against Apple's growth and ability to come up with incredibly great products.
Yeah, well, it's done Warren Buffett well. It's still his largest stock holding is in Apple, and I'm really looking forward to the June announcement of what they're going to do natively with AI on their phone, because I'm really, really waiting for that to happen. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're here is talk about top line revenue growth, and you've got a fantastic book out, the Aligning the Dots. And once again, we'll have the link in the show notes. But just tell us why you wrote the book, and then let's talk about it in the perspective of our audience.
Yeah, so I wrote the book because I've been on 23 boards. I've been a venture capitalist. I've been an entrepreneur myself, a CEO. And I've always run into a very vexing challenge, which is what do I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow the business and to grow faster? And it's a deceptively simple question, but it's really hard to answer. It's a bit like saying, what do I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to be a good parent? Well, you don't even know where to start. And I've been on 23 boards, and I've observed that it's always the same movie, which is, the company is not growing as fast. They bring the VP of sales or the head of sales, and the guy says, well, we don't have the right leads. So they bring the marketing guy. The marketing guy says, we don't have the right product. They bring the product guy who says, well, I don't have the budget, or I don't have the timeline I need. And there's a circular finger pointing thing that really is not constructive. And at the end of the day, you're like, well, we still don't understand why we're fundamentally not growing. I had this big insight a few years ago where I realized that the maximum growth rate of a business can only be achieved when that business is perfectly aligned with its target market. So it's fundamentally a question of alignment. And it's the misalignment that makes the company slow down and sometimes become irrelevant or die. And it's a bit like a mechanical watch. If you misalign the gears inside, it may still be ticking, but it will slow down and eventually it will stop ticking.
Do you therefore have to define your target market before you can get that alignment? Like, is that part of some of the growth issues?
Well, it could be part of the issue, but it's a bit like saying you need to know who you are in order to define where you want to go. And that's very true. So yeah, the target market has to be defined. Many companies think they know what it is, but they don't. It's always the external alignment with the target market, but the definition of target market, which is the ICP and who has that problem and why they should care about you, is really critical. Otherwise, you're not focused, and lack of focus is the number one. I've read a lot of death certificate of startups and companies, and the number one reason by far is because of lack of focus.
Yeah, look, and I get it all the time. I mentor people like yourself listening and watching this as tech consultants, and that's the thing that they're always in the tactic box, right? They're always trying to look at fixing the tactics, but they don't ultimately have defined their niche. They haven't defined their ideal client profile, as you said, or their target market, and they're all things to all people. And they're wondering why they're bleeding margin, and no one is accepting their connection requests and following through because they don't stand for anyone. So I think that's absolutely critical, getting that target market right. Let's go to the 4 key axes in the book and how that can help us grow.
Right. So the question is, well, what does it mean that I need to be aligned with my target market? A few years ago, I had a big insight, which is I realized that there are 4 independent axes of alignment between any business and its target market. And what's remarkable about this is that they are universal. So they apply to any business, regardless of what it does, regardless of where it operates, regardless of what it sells. And I can describe to you very quickly who they are. The first one is that the pain of the customer and the claim that the business makes to address that pain have to be aligned. So if you come to me, Paul, and you say, I have a headache, and I show you a stomachache pill, well, your pain and my claim are not aligned, you will never buy my pill, and you shouldn't.
Yes.
The second axis is the alignment between the perception and the messaging. And the messaging is how I describe my claim to you, and the perception is how you understand it, and those 2 things must be aligned. So imagine I have the right pill for your headache, and it costs 99 cents, and it can cure your headache in 10 minutes. But I describe it to you in Korean, I'm assuming you don't speak Korean. you will never buy my pill, even though it's the perfect pill for your headache, because you're like, what the heck is this guy talking? So that's the second axis. The third one is the way customers want to buy and the way the product is sold in the marketplace have to be aligned. So if I said, Paul, you can get my pill, but you have to fly here in San Francisco, the Bay Area, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, there's a pharmacy down the street from where I live. Why can't I just walk there and buy the pill? Because that's the way you want to buy it. And then the fourth axis is the one that I'm the most excited about, which is the last alignment. And in fact, it's a lesson I learned working for Steve Jobs. I spent a few years at Apple. The last one I worked directly for Steve, which is how I lost my hair, in case you ever wondered. But there's a lot of really interesting lessons I learned. And I realized that there is one and only one business on this planet. I can guarantee you that all the listeners are in the exact same business. And also American Airlines is in the same business, and Bank of America is in the same business, and Air France, and any company. And that unique fundamental business is the manufacturing and delivery of delight. So let me say that again, this is so profound. Everybody is in the exact same business. We have to manufacture and we have to deliver delight. And the amount of delight that we need to deliver has to be aligned with the amount of delight that's expected. So the fourth alignment is between what people expect in terms of delight and what is delivered to them. If you want to grow as fast as possible within your target market, you need to make sure that your business is aligned along those four dimensions, that the claim you're making is aligned with their pain, that your messaging, which is how you express your claim, is aligned with the way they understand it, the perception, that the way you sell your product in the marketplace is the way people want to buy. And then lastly, what you deliver to them is aligned with the expected delight that you have. And if you do that, then you will grow as much as possible within your target market. And those are the four universal axes of alignment between any business and its target.
Fantastic. And as I said, there'll be the link to the book, the aligning the dots in the show notes where you can dive into deeper. But let's cut to the chase and you give us some practical examples under each, right? So once again, you're listening to Philip and I, you're maybe a Salesforce partner, a NetSuite partner, et cetera, right? And you've hit that growth ceiling. The COVID, a lot of people bought IT services and SaaS products during COVID. Now things are tighter. We're running in a US election if you're in the US, and things are really getting tight. And you're like, how am I getting growth? That's sort of the context, Philip. So if I'm wearing that hat and I look at the first one, which is a pain versus the claim, what are some practical things I can do to take steps towards that?
Yeah, I mean, the first question is, what claim are we making? Are we making the same claim that all my competitors and there's no differentiation and we're like the same story? Or do we have something that is different, not better, but different? And if that's the case, then I need to be able to make that claim. And then obviously I need to think about who has the pain that is aligned with that claim. And then that's my target market. That's my ICP. And those are the people I need to market to and engage with.
And as I often say to people, and neither of you or I have got a lot of hair. I'm sure we did at one point, but we don't now. But someone's got to have a hair on fire problem is the way that I analyze it. And so often we get caught in our own backyard, our own view of the technology stack, and don't really understand the true pain. And if someone tells you the true pain in the first sales call, it's not right. Right. It's
That's
something that you've got to spend time to really dig and explore. And then, like you said, you got to have a unique way of solving that. So I think that's great. That's the first one.
The other point I want to make is nobody cares and nobody buys technology.
Yes.
People have a pain and they want a solution. I don't buy, the composition of the PL for the headache. I don't really care. I don't really understand it. But it's like, tell me if this is gonna work. Tell me if it's easy to buy. Tell me if it's easy to inject, and tell me that it's the good pricing. So a lot of IT people tend to sell technology, but the customers really don't care. They have to sell something different.
Yeah, spot on. I love that analogy. I don't know if it's true, but where the Americans spent millions of dollars inventing a pen that could write in space, and the Russians took up a pencil. Ultimately they just wanted to take notes, right? So I think it's often we get caught way too much in our own technology stack. So the second one is perception versus message. What are some practical things we can do?
So they have to listen to how does the prospect talk about the pain and what vocabulary and words do they use? and then repeat it to them. So I always say there is two types of salespeople, the crocodiles and the elephants. And the crocodiles, they have a big mouth and small ears. In other words, they talk, they don't listen. And the elephant, they have a very small mouth and they have big ears. Well, you want to be an elephant. The opening statement shouldn't be, well, let me tell you what we do. The opening statement say, hey, my customers typically are facing that challenge, that problem. Do you feel the same way? And tell me more about it. And so they have to be elephants. They have to be in a listening mode. And in fact, I like the 20-80 rule, which is 20% of the time, the sales guys or the IT guy should talk, and then 80% it should be the customer, and should never be different than that. And in fact, 90-10 is even better.
Yeah. And the great thing these days is we've got so many tools where, I use Fathom, there's Zoom recording, there's so many ways that we can record the conversation now. There is no excuse for not using the customer words in your messages and in your website. And I've just gone through 60 Salesforce partner websites, the top 60 in the world. And unfortunately, guys, you're talking to yourself. Like there's very, very few mentions of the hair on fire pain point. There's very few words that are in the language of the end client. It's all doing business with ourselves.
So the Salesforce guys are notorious for, well, I'm going to parameter your Salesforce tool better than anybody else. It's like nobody really cares about that. Tell me how that translates into real pain alleviation and real value. But I can guarantee I don't know any CRO or CFO or CEO who wakes up in the morning saying, oh boy, I wish that my Salesforce CRM system were better parameters or optimized. They don't care about that.
Spot on. And you're talking from 23 boards worth of experience there. So the third one is purchase versus sale. So what's some practical things we can do there?
So I would ask myself, how do I make the transaction as frictionless as possible? How do I make the life of the person who decided to buy as easy as possible? How do they, now that they've decided to buy, how do they acquire the product in the best, or the service in the best possible way? So it's all about frictionless transaction, and that's really critical. And this could be payment terms, it could be procurement. How do I deal with procurement? How do I make them my friend? There's many aspects to the entire sales motion, but that's what I would examine.
Yeah, and look, I definitely think that Apple, brilliant job on Delight, which we're going to get to next. But as far as that customer experience, when I worked at Coca-Cola, we always walked in the shoes of the client or the customer, right? We were always out there, and therefore we're experiencing it. Whereas, I look at a lot of, once again, partner websites, etc. And I'm thinking you've never walked through the shoes of your client, because you would have obviously picked up these simple mistakes if you had of, right? Every touch point, just go back and look at you being the customer and go through your process, and you'll be amazed at the low-hanging fruit that's going to improve your conversion sitting there right in front of you. Totally agree. So the last one is the delight versus offerings, some practical things we can do there.
I think the first question is what does delight mean in the eyes of my customers, right? If I were to ask them, if you hire us, what do you expect? And there are probably certain things that are important to them that you may or may not be sensitive to. You may think, oh, it's not a big deal. So I give you an example. They could say, well, once a week, we want to get an update on where you are in the process of implementing our new CRM system, or the bidirectional between the CRM and HubSpot, let's say, or whatever they use. And really have the customer define what they expect, and then either accept that and deliver and slightly over deliver, or say, you know what, your expectation, I'd love to do that, but we can't for X, Y, and Z reason. And then you reset the expectation somewhere else. And as you execute, they will see that you are meeting that reset expectation, not the original one. Really understanding what is the definition of success and a good relationship and delight from the service that I will provide to you as an IT consultant is really critical.
Yeah. And I think, and drawing lessons from other industries. So, if you look at, the last time you went into a 5-star hotel, et cetera, just that experience, the way you were treated there versus going into a 2 or 3-star hotel, like take those experiences that you have during your life and then bring those back into the client experience for your customers. And as we said tools for recording video, but video, I totally agree with you. Like, have a video summary each week of where the project is, so that it's easy for your key person within the business to update everyone else where the project is, right? Also, before a sales call, have a video explaining what's going to happen on the sales call, your process, etc., before they actually get on the call. They're the little things that you can do that don't take a lot of time, that can really delight the client. And I can tell you, not many of your competitors are doing that, right? So you're going to definitely stand out, and it does make a difference. Ultimately, as you know, Philip, humans buying from humans, and those things really count.
And they buy on emotions, they don't buy on rational. We have a weekly call with every single our clients every single week, period. Sometimes it's a 5-minute call, sometimes it's an hour and a half call, but there is no way that they're not going to hear from us at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times. And that's really important to us. So the time we spend with them is really important, and we want that to be frequent, and we want to be part of their team. We need to be in their minds all the time, and that's how we do it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, as I said, the link will be in the show notes to the book, Aligning the Dots. And the last question I want to ask you before we go into the rapid round is, you mentioned before that you worked for Steve Jobs for a short period of time. I know another Philip in Australia that worked. He was head of the customer research and customer experience. So that's 2 Philips that I now know that have worked for Steve. But Steve was bringing that delight, but he was also creating the ecosystem, right, and the marketplace, so that you weren't just buying the hardware, you're buying everything that came with that. With the Apple Store is, I think, still one of the best inventions I've seen. That's made my life a lot easier with all the apps on the phone. Where do you see the moment a lot of you listening, the tech consultants, are making revenue out of reselling software? But my view is that that's going to disappear over time, as people will just go to a marketplace. AI will summarize what they want, and they'll recommend this is the best software. So that's the way that I see it going. It'll be more marketplace driven. Given your experience with Steve and what he developed from an ecosystem, how do you think that's going to play out in this SaaS space?
Right. So Steve didn't wake up in the morning and said, "Oh, we're going to be vertically integrated and sell everything." That was not the motivation behind it. The motivation behind it was to say, we, Apple, need to deliver the best possible customer experience as we can. And if we don't control the hardware, then we're not going to control the experience. We're only going to control a piece of that. And that's why we started to integrate everything. And now we do chips, or Apple does chips, which when I was working for Steve, we were not doing chips. But Apple went so to the middle, very, very low in the stack, all the way to, if you walk into an Apple store, the experience has to be fantastic. If your mission is to deliver the best possible customer experience, then you have to vertically integrate, and you have to control the entire experience, from thinking about the product all the way, from discovery, as I call it, all the way to return. And so if you're in the IT services businesses, you need to think about it this way. Every touch point that you don't control is an opportunity to degrade the customer experience. And that's not a good thing. So it's all about frictionless transaction, but also frictionless delivery. It's like, hey, you need to buy hardware, I'll buy it for you. You don't have to worry about it. And I'm not making any money on it. So you're not, I'm not trying, that's not the value I bring. But I will deliver a turnkey solution to you that's working, and you don't have to worry about it. I think that's the parallel between the Apple vertical integration and the way I would think if I were in IT services.
Right. And is there any moment that sticks out when Steve said something to you and you're like, oh, well, okay, I'll remember that for forever? Was there any of those
I think
touchdown moments with Steve?
Yeah, I mean, there were examples. Like, one of the obsession and one of the hardest thing that Apple does, I think, is simplification. And you take a complex problem or a complex approach, and you say, well, how do I simplify that? So the ease of use is the result of a very messy and tricky process to simplify. And Steve was a genius at that. I remember meetings where we had a bunch of features on the board, and he came and he says, well, I have like 27 features. He said, I give you 1 hour. In 1 hour, I want to go back, and there's only 3. And if you guys can figure out, you're all fired. And sure enough, within an hour, we had the 3 features. This obsession to prune, not to add, that I think is difficult. People always think, well, I need to have more features, I need to have more stuff. And I always say, no, you don't need to have more stuff, you need to have less. Which one do you kill? That's a much more difficult decision than adding. I don't know if you're aware, but when you're a teenager, the brain develops, the neural connections are established, and the brain overdoes it, a lot more connection being established. And then we go through a pruning process, which is a very healthy process. And in a way, it's the same thing with product design, or you need to overdo it and then you need to start pruning and cutting. And that's very hard to do. And most companies can do it or don't know.
Yeah, and that links back to your focus question.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was at the start, or your point around focus. Awesome. Well, what we're going to do is take a short break, and we're going to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back for the rapid fire questions. Running a tech consulting business can feel like a solo journey, but what if you didn't have to navigate it alone? Introducing the Tech Collective, your go-to resource for tackling those burning questions and unlocking your potential. Join a dynamic collective of experienced tech consultants ready to share insights, strategies, and support to help you today. Grappling with sales, client, or team challenges, the Tech Collective has your back. Join us today at paulhigginsmentoring.com/TC. It will help you work smarter, not harder, to achieve your business goals. Just visit paulhigginsmentoring.com/TC. So, Philip, we're at the rapid fire questions. Are you ready to receive the questions and give rapid fire answers?
I am ready.
All right, fantastic. So, first one is, what are some of the daily habits that help you scale Blue Dot Partners?
Well, I think it's just, back to this question of focus. What are the 3 things I'm going to do today? No more than 3. And I will call that a successful day if I achieve them, but I don't want to do more than the 3. Which one is important?
Right. And, you're a very learned guy. Where do you go to find more about, growing a business?
I talk to a bunch of CEOs, I talk to investors and board members, and they say, well, are you happy with your growth rate? Why are you not growing? What's in the way of growth? So I think talking to people and listening, back to the elephant versus crocodile analogy that I used earlier, that's what I try to do.
Brilliant. And what's one wish we could grant Blue Dot Partners?
Well, if you give me more partners, it's very hard for us to recruit talented people who are really good at management consulting, but also who have been CEOs of real businesses. We don't give parenting advice without having kids. That's kind of a philosophical choice that we made. And finding the right talent for us is really hard. And I wish I could find it more easily, and it's not that easy.
Well, if you look across those 23 board positions you've had and all your business experience, what's something that you know now that you wish you had have known earlier?
Well, I wish I had built my network earlier and with more serious at the beginning of my life, my business life. And that's the advice I give young people. It's like, we don't really care about whether you have an MBA or not. We don't care where the MBA came from. Find mentors, learn from them. I mean, Steve was an amazing mentor, and I was so blessed and lucky and grateful to have him, even though it was difficult to work with him. But it taught me a lot of things. So find those mentors, network, establish long-term relationship. Don't think of transaction. Think about 15, 20, 30 years. I still talk to people who worked for me at Apple a long time ago, and they're still friends. And that's really important, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, as I said, you've been listening to Philip. This is episode 537. He's from bluedotpartners.com. So the link will be there in the show notes. Also, check out his book, Aligning the Dots, his TEDx. So don't forget that. You'll find out what the analogy is with parachuting, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant one. And Philip, thanks for coming on and sharing your wisdom today.
Hey, thank you, Paul. It's such a pleasure to be on your show, and you're such a great host and asking thoughtful questions. Thank you so much again.
Great. Thank you. What a great interview with Philip. I love how he has the 4 axes from alignment to your target market, but also the practical applications he gave. I love his analogy of the crockett and the elephant, and also delight. I think, what can you do today to improve the delight for your customers and take the lead that the amazing Steve Jobs had? Also, check out his TEDx talk, and also the link to the book, Aligning the Dots, is in the show notes. Reach out to Philip and say that you heard him here on the show, reach out to him on LinkedIn. Once again, the link's there, and say that you heard him and thank him for his rich insights, and ask him some questions that are specific to your situation. If you have some peers that could benefit from this, please share it with them. They'll think you're a rock star. Check out our solo shows, and I'll see you next time on the Paul Higgins Show. Time for action. Let me know what you implemented from the show. I promise to respond. Plus, get the Tech Consultants Roadmap at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap.